How will the 2022 Special Ukraine Policy help both Ukraine citizens and New Zealand-based Ukrainians?
Look, we welcome that policy because now it allows up to 4,000 family members to join family already in New Zealand. Fantastic news.
Mm-hmm.
And it is not perfect. If you talk to the Ukrainian community, they are, there's no financial support to go with it. So it has flaws. Mm-hmm. But actually, this is where we also want to say, and we've called on the New Zealand government with an open letter with another organisation, World Vision amongst other organisations, for New Zealand to increase the refugee quota to 4,000 over the course of 22-23 years, simply because Ukraine is just the latest crisis. New Zealand, it comes 95th when it comes to resettlement of refugees and asylum seekers. It's not doing enough. And we have existing crises that the New Zealand government has done way too little about. And that does include the recent Afghani debacle. But I would also name check the living hell that people in Eritrea and Ethiopia are going through right now. It's the anniversary of the Yemen conflict. So there is any number of crises that New Zealand could do a whole heap more for, and including Myanmar in our own region. And it needs to step up because it is woefully inadequate in what it is doing when it comes to refugee resettlement. So a bit of a bouquet to start with, but also a bit of a brickbat. We're simply not doing enough when compared with similar countries.
What is Amnesty AUT and Amnesty International New Zealand's take on the current situation in Ukraine? And what is the next step for Amnesty?
Okay, so because we are part of the wider Amnesty community, we follow the actions that they have put forward, that Amnesty have put forward. And so at the moment, because we're all having to work online because of the high COVID cases, a lot of our work is online. So through our social media outlets, on Facebook and on Instagram, mostly Instagram, just putting the word out there on what's happening. We do have a petition that we're pushing through, that we're handing it over on this Thursday, on the 24th. And so that's going directly to the Russian Minister of Defense. And this is for us to call on Russia to stop the aggression and protect civilians in Ukraine. And so that's all running through Instagram at the moment. We're trying to push people to sign a petition. So, I mean, if this comes out in time, that would be a nice thing to sort of highlight. I think from what I last heard, we are up to 6,000 signatures. We're aiming for 7,000 before this Thursday, so that would be good. And another thing that we as a group is pushing is the disinformation and also the heavy crackdown on Russians within their own country. So I'm not sure if you've sort of been exposed to that through the news, but basically it's become illegal to post anything regarding the conflict in Ukraine. People are just getting taken off the streets, even just for holding up a blank piece of paper, because they've been deemed to, be protesting. People's phones are getting checked in train stations to see whether or not they're, against anything or doing something illegal, supposedly. So that's one thing that we're also pursuing. I mentioned about the disinformation as well. And from a local standpoint, we're wanting to put pressure on the New Zealand government to support and expedite resettlement of the family members of New Zealand-based Ukrainians, increase humanitarian aid to the people of Ukraine, because currently New Zealand government is only supporting giving $2 million, and we're trying to push for 20 million. So yeah, those are some things that we're working on.
Okay, big question. Okay, huge question. And so let's just start with, I guess there's 3 distinct areas of involvement that we have. It's not definitive, but it kind of highlights where we're going. We are pushing back very strongly against Russia's aggression on the sovereign state of Ukraine. And we're doing that in at the United Nations, lobbying governments around the world. We are, what else are we doing? Any fora that we have access to encourage the world to continue to raise concern directly with Russia, and apply as much pressure as they can. We're encouraging them to do that. We are also have called on, we talked briefly about the refugees and the need for New Zealand to create more spaces for vulnerable people. We have called on neighbouring states of Ukraine to keep those borders open, allow people to flow without fear or favour where it's safe for them to find safety. And we have welcomed the support of the European Union and member states to keep those borders open. And we know they're taking huge pressure right now. We've also asked governments to commit substantially to the amount of humanitarian aid that they can provide to the people of Ukraine. We need to see aid organisations in there, and the only way to guarantee that really is to ensure that that there's ceasefires and other mechanisms, or that we stop the fighting really, so that aid organisations, so that humanitarian groups can get in there and help, whether it's the wounded, whether it's the hungry, whatever, that kind of thing. The third point would be that teamed with the aggression against Ukraine is an all-out assault on the respect of human rights and human rights defenders in Russia. So if you are guilty of speaking out against Russia or Putin, and if you are speak out against the war, you will be picked up, you will be targeted, you will be prevented from speaking out. So including Amnesty International. It's no longer safe for us to be in Russia. We have been shut down and shut up, but we haven't, because we're still speaking out. So, and I think Putin has failed to get a sense. I mean, he's a Cold War man. He hasn't got a clue about how social media is revealing all his lies. And if Amnesty can't be in country, then that's why we use satellite footage. If that's what it takes, that's what we'll use. So we need to ensure that any democracy that remains, or any democratic institutions that remain in Russia, continue to get oxygen and continue not to be targeted and pressured and brutalized and killed. Actually, we need them to operate, because again, come the day, we will need every single one of those people to help rebuild Russia, as much as we will need all the people on the planet to help us rebuild Ukraine, just in different ways. And of course, we stand in solidarity with our Ukrainian whānau. Every step of the way, we want them to know that they are not alone and that we've got their back to the best of our ability.
How can people in New Zealand help the citizens of Ukraine?
Well, the easiest, I would say, the simplest way people could help is to sign the petition. And I would imagine there would be more of those coming up as the longer this war extends. Just showing their support to people in Ukraine. And also, I think there's been some talks of discrimination and that is being thrown towards the people of Russian people in New Zealand, which to me just shows how very little people understand the conflict. Russian people are also suffering. It's not just people in Ukraine. You have to sort of think of it like who's really responsible for the conflict. and which parties are suffering, because both parties, both Ukrainians and Russians, are suffering. Their human rights are being violated. So I think, yeah, education is a huge one, I think. If they have spare cash, which to be honest with you, right now in New Zealand is probably not a lot, but even donating for a certain cause to contribute towards helping with the crises, especially with the refugee crisis that's going on. I think the last figures I saw was about 4 million people are now have now become refugees because of the conflict. So, these are usually, it's usually not just government entities that help these people out. You do need your non-government organizations to help out, and this is through charities and through donations.
The Amnesty has a petition that's going direct to target. It includes the Minister of Defense in Russia, but also the Russian ambassador in Wellington. Both have been guilty of promoting lies and the Russian propaganda, no surprises there. But by going direct to target, we can highlight that New Zealanders, and closing in on 6,000 plus of them, are very concerned by what is going down in Ukraine. We can also go direct to support for the very active Ukraine community in this country, about 1,500 apparently, but they have been really vocal and outspoken. They are organising vigils and protests, and where we can, we encourage people to stand in solidarity with them. They also have a list of people are making many offers to them. So we are saying go direct to the Ukrainian community here if you've got offers to make. I think key to beyond that, I think key to what we can do individually is push back on the propaganda, promote the facts, don't amplify the lies. And one of the roles that Amnesty has played is that we are on the ground and we are verifying every day crimes against humanity or potential war crimes. We're documenting, we're pushing back against the lies and misinformation. And we will hand that information over to the International Criminal Court. And come the day, we will hold the perpetrators to justice. So yeah, we need to do that here. If we have any friends and family in Russia, very gently encourage them to, if they're able, access sources that are non-state run, because many of them will believe the lies, but they will have no other option but to believe the lies because that's all they're listening to. So if it's possible to do so safely, we encourage people to get alternative information. And you might have seen at the end of last week, Arnie Schwarzenegger put through a 9-minute video to the people of Russia. And he did that because both the Kremlin and Putin follow his account. So I'm sure they don't do any more, but last weekend he grabbed that little pocket of opportunity, and it was a powerful speech to the people of Russia. I believe Putin and the Kremlin and Lavrov and all the other liars.
Do you think it is important for people to understand that not only Ukrainians are being affected, it's also Russian citizens?
In so many different ways, because we are lucky in New Zealand where we have free speech. we can fight for our rights. We can, without we have laws that sort of protect us and all these institutions, and yet in places like Russia, overnight people can make laws against protests, which well, again, we're lucky that we're in a democracy. They're not. And so I think sometimes we need to put ourselves in their shoes, and it's easy for us to condemn some Russian people who may not be out there protesting and risking their lives. But if we're in the same situation, what would we be doing? The act of it's brave, like the people of the Russian people who are out there protesting. is brave, because they are literally getting thrown in prison for this. And so I think we need to have more of an open, have more of an open mind regarding this situation, and also understand, the difficulties of living in Russia right now. I know a friend of mine, a very close friend of mine, who is Russian, and her parents are still over there, and they can't access their financials. They literally have to be really careful about the way they conduct their lives, fearing of what's going to happen. These sanctions, although they are geared towards Putin, is also affecting people within Russia. So I think it's easy for us to sort of point fingers, but also, again, going back to, we need to understand who's really trying not to be political here. Who's really, what's really important to protect, I should say, which is human rights.
Any final comments?
That's it's really important for people to continue to have hope in this situation. For me, action taking is my antidote to despair. And the reason I continue to take action every day in whatever way I can, whether it's signing a petition, sharing a social media post, holding out a hand of friendship to our Ukrainian brothers and sisters, praising the incredibly brave Russians who are speaking out against the war. There's many ways to take action, and every single one of those actions contributes to the mass, the global action taking. But effectively, every single one of those is doing this to Putin. Now, that's important, to push back against Putin. So I think it's really important that we choose to take action rather than think it's all too hard and it's making no difference. Because if we think like that, then Putin has won. Mm-hmm. And there's no way that I plan to let that bully win. So I encourage you personally and your readers or listeners, I don't know which format you're going to use, to take action, wherever they feel most powerful.